The usual preconditions for an organisation adopting new ways of working is that there is a need for the change. The need may come from a change in technology, it may come from industry disruption. Ideally, it's the organisation realising that for it to move into the next phase of its growth, it needs to change what's happening inside. It doesn't need to be a catastrophic change, and ideally the organisation is not backed into a corner and forced to change. Agility and the modern ways of working and thinking are all about recognising the need for a change and then identifying what is the most effective way to make that change. Starting on an agile journey does require thinking and planning. Contrary to popular opinion, agility is not free-form poetry. We want to make sure that we're actually changing for good and changing based on a valued outcome. So the first thing that we need to do with any change or any transformation, agile or otherwise, is understand the why. We need to make sure that everyone understands the need, the why, the rationale for the change. Then we sit down and we actually plan incremental, iterative change steps that we'll go through. The key is to make sure that we are not doing a big change, we're not disrupting ourselves too much, and we're not disabling our ability to do business. What we're trying to do is build a culture that is change fit, resilient to all of the changes that are going to happen. We also need to make sure that we do multidimensional changes. We can't focus on one aspect of the operating model. People, process, and technology need to be considered. But we need to think about the entirety of the organisation as well. Finance, people and culture teams, we need to look at marketing. We need to make sure that the wheels of the organisation continue to move in sync. So planning is very important. The plan needs to be holistic and it needs to be comprehensive. We also need to take a systematic approach to the planning of the change. We don't want to put in place anything new that people aren't ready for. So we go through cycles of exposure, education, then implementation of the change, then another change, following those cycles. We need to make sure the changes we make up front are solid foundations for us to build the rest of our changes on. We also need to build feedback loops into our change journey so we can make sure that we are actually delivering the value that we're trying to achieve. We must stop, reflect, learn, and adjust as we go. The journey is different for leaders and teams, but not because of different messages. It's just because when we're working in an organisation, people have different roles and different responsibilities. A common mistake for any transformation is we don't make the transformation personal. When we're at work, when we're within our organisation, we're investing our time and energy. So it behooves the organisation to invest a personal message to the receiver of any change message. We need to tell people what the change means to them, what we're asking of them, and how it relates to their relationships in the wider organisation. And this is why there can't be a single message. For leaders, we're asking you to lead. We may ask you to interact with teams in different ways. We may ask you to interact with different peers throughout the organisation. We may ask you to share your knowledge in a different way. That's what leadership is, and that's what leaders do. Teams, we will ask you to work with different people. We'll ask you to adopt new patterns of behaviour. We will ask you to interact with different parts of the business as well. The key, however, for both leaders and teams is to build an environment that encourages the flow of information. From leaders to teams, from teams to leaders. Together, we can build a collective knowledge pool. And this will allow us to work effectively and efficiently in the future. When you transition to new ways of working, we will uncover barriers, blockers, and pain points. There are some common ones. The first thing we're going to experience is resistance. People don't like change unless it's actually been explained to them. Most of us actually are very change fit and resilient. We know how to do a lot of change. But unless the change is explained, people aren't going to move to the new position. Resistance is probably the first one. The other blocker or barrier that we often experience is that people don't know what's next. They don't like being taken to the edge of a cliff. So what we need to do there is explain the entirety of the journey so people understand what will come next and they're able to do the now so they're ready for the next. That helps them set themselves up for success. One of the key things to remember, though, is any transformation is about problem solving. What we need to do is surface and expose any barriers or blockers. We've got to uncover those impediments so that we can look at them in the full light of day and make some informed decisions about how to address them. Every organisation is different, every team is different. There is no checklist of the types of things that we will find. What we need to do is have the courage to face them full on, to lean into the change and build that resilience so that we're able to see any problem that we find and then deal with it. The best piece of advice I can offer about going through a major transformation program is to do it agilely. And I don't mean to sound trite when I say that. I mean we need to plan, learn and adjust. There is no way that you can map out an entire change program up front. We need to build a roadmap of change and then we need to build feedback loops into that roadmap. What we're looking for is value. We must always focus on the why, not the what, not the how. We need to make sure the organisation understands the rationale and the outcome that we're trying to achieve. If we have that, then we can get investment and buy-in from the entire organisation. The other thing that we need to be very aware of is you cannot transform a part of an organisation. You really have to look at the transformation holistically. Trying to change one department won't work. We need to understand how all of the organisation fits together and then build a program of change that systematically and sympathetically induces change where we need it. Some changes will come from within, some changes will come from outside, but we need to have a plan that allows us to assess, to look for value, and to change our process if it's not working.